Zdravo, Kako, and welcome back, my fellow language teachers, to Adventures in Language. I'm your guide, Emily. And in this video, we're talking about one of the biggest secret powers that teachers have at their disposal. Yep, you guessed it. Formative assessments. What are they? Why do they matter? And how can you seamlessly incorporate more of them into your classroom? And for those of you who might not know me yet, I'm Emily. I'm a linguist at Mango. I have my PhD in linguistics and a passion for language teaching. Well, maeoki-wa sate oki? Let's get to it. So, formative assessments, what are they? Formative assessments are tests, but they're not any kind of test. They're tests for the purpose of student learning and practicing, not for teacher evaluation or grading. They stand in contrast to summative assessments, think final exams, which are the big important tests that serve as the teacher's main mechanism for evaluating and grading student learning after a unit or a course has ended. My favorite mnemonic device for remembering the difference between formative and summative assessments is that formative assessments help students get informed about their current learning progress, while summative assessments help teachers summarize how much the student has learned by the end of the unit. And the defining characteristic of formative assessments are their timing. It happens during the learning process, not after. Examples of formative assessments include low-stakes mini-quizzes, comprehension checks, and active learning questions during class. And as it turns out, that low-stakes part is a really important feature of effective formative assessments, and more on that in just a moment. But first, why do formative assessments matter? Simply put, they make learning more effective. Here are 3 fast facts about formative assessments. Formative assessments are a form of low-stakes, high-rewards learning. As we know, grade anxiety can be counterproductive to learning. And formative assessments that are ungraded or perhaps graded for completion only are one of the best ways to provide your students with learning opportunities that are at the same time low stakes and high rewards. And I say low stakes because the grades are detached from the task, and I say high reward because students are able to focus fully on identifying their learning gaps in the language. Okay, fast fact number 2. Formative assessments are a form of active as opposed to passive learning for students. This is important because active learning helps students reinforce and reorganize knowledge in their minds while also identifying their own learning gaps. When we don't use active learning strategies like formative assessments with our students, they can fall prey to something called the fluency illusion. The fluency illusion is essentially a cognitive artifact of the human mind. It impacts language learning because it can lead students to believe that they understand more about the language than they really do. Want to know more about the fluency illusion and active learning strategies that you can use with your students? Check out the video linked on screen and in the description down below. Okay, fast fact number 3. The data from formative assessments helps teachers teach better. When students aren't able to answer a question on a quiz, that's informative to us because then we know what to focus on in order to help them address their learning gaps. And if you'd like to learn more about the research behind formative assessments in language learning, then check out the suggested links in the description down below. Okay, so now we know what formative assessments are and why they matter. Now it's time for 3 tips on how to use them effectively. Tip number 1, implement a tickets out activity at the end of every class. I love this one. These are essentially planned pop quizzes. It's simple. You include a couple short questions that students must respond to upon leaving class, and the questions will be directly connected to what you covered in class that day. Pro tip, consider grading them only for completion to reduce grade anxiety. Tip number 2, ask your students more questions during class. As a teacher, you spend a lot of time explaining things to your students. Of course, that doesn't mean that you should be doing all or even most of the thinking. As you explain a topic or answer a student question, routinely throw out comprehension check questions back to your students to make sure that they're understanding what you're talking about along the way. Think of yourself as a singer on stage who tosses the mic back to the crowd for crowd engagement. These little comprehension checks are actually a big deal because they're a kind of effective formative assessment. They help your students understand what they know and what they don't, and they also help you get a pulse of where they're at, which you can use to inform your lesson planning. Tip number 3, our last tip, have your students use the Mango Languages app outside of class. The Mango app offers a convenient form of formative assessment supplement for the language learning classroom. Outside of class, students get to complete low-stakes, high-reward lessons with frequent quizzes, and they come to class ready to put that learning into action. It's perfect for a flipped classroom approach. To learn more about the Mango app yourself, check out our white paper, which we've linked for you in the description. Oh, and did I mention that our team at Mango will help integrate the Mango app into your school's LMS? That way you can spend less time on logistics setup and more time on, well, teaching. Okay, time for a recap. What did we cover in today's video? Well, formative assessments, like quizzes or comprehension checks, are low-stakes, high-rewards tasks because they actively facilitate student learning and help students identify their knowledge gaps. We also covered 3 tips for how you can incorporate more formative assessments into your class. Those were 1, incorporate a tickets out routine at the end of class. 2, ask your students more questions during class. And 3, have your students use the Mango Languages app outside of class. Well, my fellow language teachers, that's all for this time on Adventures in Language. If you're new here and you'd like to make sure that you're up to date on all of our awesome language teacher content, then come join the Mango fam by subscribing to the channel. And if you really loved it, then ring that notification bell and tell your friends about us. We appreciate you. Psst, want to know what languages were used in today's video? All that and more found in the description down below. Well, Važi, ciao, and I look forward to hanging out with you here next time. Bye. Oh, I'm back, and I'm here to remind you to get your free language teacher goodies, which you can access through the link in the description. In next week's video, we're diving into growth mindset, what it is and what it has to do with language learning. If you want to be the first to know when that video goes live, then ring that notification bell. In the meantime, you can catch up on our existing videos, which you can access through the links here on the screen. See you next time on Adventures in Language. Bye.